Open the gate, Mr. Barrett, before you turn this into something you can't undo. Melissa Crawford said it like the gate belonged to her. It was 8:07 on a Saturday morning, and I was sitting 12 feet above her on a chestnut gelding named Copper. Cold sunlight spilled across Barrett Creek Ranch. Mist still hung over the lower pasture, and every breath Copper took came out white against the cedar trees. Beneath me, his saddle leather creaked softly. Across the gate, nearly 40 Briarwood residents had stopped moving. Bicycles, golf carts, two-horse trailers, parents with kids, a pair of retirees holding walking poles. Nobody had expected the steel ranch gate to be closed, especially Melissa. She stood in the middle of the dusty road wearing a tailored pink business suit over a white blouse and black high heels that were already collecting pale brown dirt. Her arms were folded. Her expression wasn't. "You cannot block the Briarwood Greenway." I looked at the sign wired to my gate. Private property. Access suspended. Then I looked back at her. Funny. Melissa narrowed her eyes. "What? Last month you fined me for using it." A few people behind her exchanged looks. Copper shifted beneath me. His front hoof pressed into the packed earth. Crunch. Melissa glanced at him like he was somehow violating another rule just by standing there. "This is not about your horse. That's not what your violation letter said." Her jaw tightened. 3 weeks earlier, Briarwood Estates had charged me $750 for riding Copper down this exact trail. Not through their clubhouse. Not across somebody's backyard. Not through a community playground. My land. Barrett Creek Ranch. 186 acres of pasture, creek bottom, cedar fence, and an old western trail that had existed long before Briarwood poured its first sidewalk. And now half their neighborhood was standing outside my gate, because that same trail happened to be the fastest route from Briarwood Estates to the county recreation preserve on the other side of my property. Melissa stepped closer. Her heels sank slightly into the dirt. "Open it." "No, you're inconveniencing an entire community because of a personal disagreement." I leaned forward and rested one hand on the saddle horn. "No, Melissa, I stopped lending you something." Her eyes flashed. "Residents have used this trail for 19 years. I know. The association maintains it. I know. We have maps documenting it. I know." That bothered her more than if I had argued. Behind Melissa, a man in a cycling helmet raised his hand. "Can we just go around?" I pointed toward the fence line. "Not without crossing private pasture." Melissa turned sharply. "Do not listen to him. The HOA has established rights here." That was when a white SUV pulled onto the shoulder behind the waiting golf carts. Lauren Pierce stepped out carrying a document case. Melissa saw her. The confidence on her face changed by maybe 5%. But I noticed. Lauren walked toward the gate. No rush. No drama. Just boots on gravel and a folder under one arm. Melissa pointed at me. "Your client is deliberately obstructing community access." Lauren stopped beside the gate. "My client is exercising rights under the recorded agreement." Melissa gave a short laugh. "What recorded agreement?" I looked down at Coppa's mane. There it was. The question. The one that had taken 3 weeks, 2 county archive searches, 1 surveyor, 3 HOA fines, and a ridiculous "No horses" sign to reach. Lauren opened her document case. Melissa stared at the papers. Behind her, the crowd had gone silent. Somewhere down by Barrett Creek, a meadowlark called through the mist. Copper flicked one ear. Melissa looked from Lauren to me. "What is that?" I could have answered. Instead, I let the silence sit there. Because 3 weeks earlier, I hadn't known that document existed either. Back then, I thought my problem was a $750 fine. I thought somebody at Briarwood had made a stupid mistake. I had no idea their entire trail system depended on permission buried in an old county record. And I definitely didn't know Melissa Crawford was about to violate the one clause that kept their gate open. It started with 3 hoof prints, a camera shutter, and an envelope waiting on my kitchen counter. 3 weeks earlier, Copper left exactly 3 hoof prints in the soft dirt before somebody decided they were worth $750. It was a Tuesday morning. The sun had barely cleared the cottonwoods along Barrett Creek, and the pasture still smelled like wet grass and cedar. Copper moved beneath me at an easy walk, his chestnut coat dark with morning dew along the legs. Leather creaked. His bit jingled softly. Hooves pressed into the old western trail. Thump, thump, thump. I had ridden that route almost every morning since taking over Barrett Creek Ranch. 186 acres. Pasture to the south. Creek bottom to the west. An old barn, 3 fenced paddocks, and enough work to keep me busy until retirement. The ranch wasn't part of Briarwood Estates. I had checked that before closing. No HOA covenants. No dues. No architectural committee. No woman with a clipboard telling me whether my barn door was the correct shade of brown. At 47, I considered that a feature. Kappa's ears suddenly turned toward the trees. An engine. A white SUV was parked about 60 yards ahead where the trail widened near the western fence. Briarwood Community Compliance was printed across the door. A man stood beside it holding a phone. I slowed Kappa. The phone came up. Click. I looked behind me. Nobody. Click. You photographing me? The man lowered the phone. Documenting trail activity. This is Barrett Creek Ranch. He glanced at Kappa. I know. That answer bothered me. Then what are you documenting? Equestrian use. I almost laughed. Kappa flicked his tail. You mean the horse? The man didn't smile. You'll receive notice if there's an issue. I stared at him for another second, then touched my heel lightly against Kappa. We kept moving. I forgot about it by breakfast. 2 days later, a certified envelope was waiting on my kitchen counter. Briarwood Estates Homeowners Association. I checked the address. Mine. I opened it. Notice of violation. Unauthorized livestock/equestrian activity within Briarwood Recreational Corridor. Fine assessed, $750. I read it twice. Then a third time. Attached were 3 photographs. Me. Kappa. My trail. The timestamp showed Tuesday morning. I walked to the window. From the kitchen, I could see the western pasture and the cedar posts following the trail toward the creek. Kappa stood near the trough chewing hay. Apparently you're expensive, I muttered. He kept chewing. I pulled my closing documents from the office. Parcel map. Survey. Title paperwork. The trail ran inside my boundary. Not close. Inside. I called the number on the violation. A receptionist transferred me immediately. Melissa Crawford. My name is Cole Barrett. A pause. Then her voice warmed slightly. Mr. Barrett. I was expecting your call. I got a $750 fine. Yes. For riding my horse. Within the Briarwood Greenway. I looked at my survey. You mean the trail on Barrett Creek Ranch? The association maintains and regulates that recreational corridor. Your HOA doesn't regulate my ranch. Another pause. This one colder. Mr. Barrett. The trail has operated as part of Briarwood's recreational network for nearly 19 years. That doesn't answer what I said. Our community maintains the surface, drainage, vegetation, and access points. Melissa. Yes. My deed line runs around that trail. Her voice hardened. Ownership does not necessarily eliminate established community rights. That sentence stopped me. Not because I agreed. Because it sounded practiced. I looked down at the map again. The trail entered my northern boundary, followed Barrett Creek, crossed nearly half the ranch, then exited toward the county recreation preserve. Suddenly, I understood why Briarwood cared about it. Without that corridor, their residents would need to take the public road almost 4 miles around my property. Still, that didn't explain the fine. So let me understand this, I said. Your residents cross my property, your employee photographs me on my property, and then you charge me for riding my horse there? You're simplifying the issue. I'm trying very hard to. Melissa exhaled. If you'd like, come to the HOA office tomorrow. I'll show you the governing maps. I'm not governed by your HOA. Then come see why the trail is. The line went quiet. I looked through the window at Kappa, then at the 3 photographs attached to the violation. I thought Melissa had made a paperwork mistake. I had no idea she was about to put a "No Horses" sign on my ranch. And I definitely didn't know that the map she planned to show me would almost convince me she was right. Melissa Crawford's office had a framed photograph of the Briarwood Greenway hanging directly behind her desk. That should have warned me. I arrived at 10 the next morning carrying my deed map, survey, and the $750 violation notice. Melissa was already waiting. Pink tailored blazer, white blouse, black heels. A thick HOA binder sat open in front of her. Mr. Barrett. Melissa. She gestured toward the chair. I stayed standing. Her office smelled like lemon furniture polish and expensive coffee. Through the window behind her, sprinklers swept across perfectly trimmed Briarwood lawns. Nothing about the place looked accidental. Melissa turned her binder toward me. This is the Briarwood Recreational Network. A color map showed walking paths, bicycle routes, common areas, and one long green line running west. Straight through Barrett Creek Ranch. She tapped it. Briarwood Greenway. I call that my trail. The association has maintained it for 19 years. That still doesn't explain how you can find me. Melissa turned another page. Trail use regulations. Cyclists yield to pedestrians. Motorized vehicles prohibited except maintenance. Equestrian activity restricted to HOA-approved events and designated hours. No horses without association authorization, she said. I looked at her. On my ranch. Within the recreational corridor. My ranch. Mr. Barrett. Repeating that doesn't erase established use. Neither did repeating established use magically make her my landlord. I slid my survey onto the desk. Show me where Briarwood owns this strip. Melissa barely looked at it. The association's rights predate your ownership. That was clever. Not an answer, but clever. I folded the survey. I'm not paying the fine. Then additional penalties may accrue. I left before irritation made me less useful. At 6:40 the next morning, Copper and I rode toward the creek. That was when I saw the sign. White aluminum. Green lettering. No horses. HOA regulated trail. It had been bolted to one of my cedar posts. I sat in the saddle staring at it. Copper breathed against the bit. You seeing this? His ear turned toward me. I dismounted. The bolts were new. Bright zinc against weathered cedar. I removed the sign, carried it to the barn, and leaned it against the wall. Then I photographed the empty post. Click. By afternoon, Melissa emailed. Removal of association trail signage constitutes interference with community operations. I replied with 6 words. Do not install signs on my property. The next morning, the sign was back. Same post. New bolts. I stood there holding Kappa's reins while anger climbed slowly through my chest. Not because of the sign. Because somebody had entered my ranch after I explicitly told them not to and attached it again. I reached for my wrench. Then my phone rang. Lauren Pierce. I had called her the previous afternoon. Cole, I'm looking at their sign. Don't touch it. I already removed it once. Then leave this one exactly where it is. I stared at the green letters. No horses. You want that staying on my fence. For now. Why? Because Melissa just gave us evidence. That cooled me down. A little. Lauren asked me to send photographs of the sign, post, trail, violation letter, and Briarwood map. I did. 20 minutes later she called back. Do not close the trail yet. That had been my next move. How'd you know? Because you own a ranch and somebody keeps bolting signs to it. I almost smiled. Give me one reason. I'll give you 19. I went quiet. Lauren continued. Preliminary records show Briarwood has maintained that corridor since around 2006. Gravel, drainage, brush clearing, signage. Maybe more. So Melissa's right. I didn't say that. She has 19 years. She has 19 years of something. The wind moved through the cottonwoods. Copper nudged my shoulder. What's something? That's what I'm finding out. I looked down the trail toward Briarwood. What do you need from me? Nothing dramatic. Keep records. Don't argue with their employees. And don't block access until we know exactly what legal rights exist. I looked at the HOA sign again. That's difficult advice. Good legal advice usually is. Before hanging up, Lauren paused. One more thing. What? Why do you think they care this much about one horse? I looked west. The trail disappeared through my pasture toward the county preserve. For the first time, I stopped thinking about the fine. Maybe Copper wasn't what Melissa was protecting. Maybe it was the trail itself. Melissa won the first room before I understood what game we were playing. The Briarwood clubhouse was packed Thursday night. Folding chairs filled the meeting hall. Wet jackets hung over seat backs. Burnt coffee steamed from paper cups. And nearly 70 homeowners faced a projector screen where a green line cut across an aerial photograph of Barrett Creek Ranch. Briarwood Greenway. Melissa stood beside it in her pink blazer, white blouse, and black heels. My trail glowed behind her like public property. For 19 years, she said, Briarwood residents have relied on this corridor for safe recreational access to the county preserve. Click. A photograph appeared. Families riding bicycles. Click. A maintenance crew spreading gravel. Click. Workers clearing fallen branches. Click. A drainage invoice from 2014. Melissa had photographs, receipts, maps, and memories. I had a horse. At least that was how she made it look. Unfortunately, she continued, the new owner of Barrett Creek Ranch has challenged established community use and removed association safety signage. Heads turned toward me. I sat in the back beside Lauren. A woman 2 rows ahead whispered something to her husband. He looked over his shoulder. Lauren didn't move. Listen, she murmured. So I listened. An older resident stood. My grandchildren have used that trail since they could ride bikes. Another woman raised her hand. Are we going to lose access to the preserve? Melissa gave them exactly the answer they wanted. The board intends to protect Briarwood's rights. Applause. Not everyone. Enough. I felt my jaw tighten. Melissa clicked to another slide. A trail map dated 2008. Then 2011. Then 2017. Every version labeled the corridor Briarwood Greenway. 19 years. Lauren leaned toward me. Maps aren't deeds. She's got more than maps. I know. After public comments, Lauren finally stood. My name is Lauren Pierce. I represent Mr. Barrett. The room quieted. Melissa folded her hands. Lauren didn't challenge the maintenance history. Didn't mention the fine. Didn't mention the NO horses sign. She asked one question. Can the association provide the recording number for the easement governing the Barrett Creek corridor? Melissa blinked. The what? The recorded easement. We have established access. I understand the claim. I'm asking for the recording number. Melissa looked toward another board member. Then her binder. Our counsel has the relevant documents. Lauren nodded. Great. Please have counsel send them. She sat down. That was it. On the drive home, rain started tapping against my windshield. I waited until we reached the ranch gate. 19 years. Lauren looked out toward the dark pasture. Of use. And maintenance. Yes. And maps. Yes. I shut off the truck. So what exactly am I supposed to feel good about? You're not. That answer surprised me. Lauren turned toward me. Cole, long-term use can create real legal issues. I'm not going to pretend history doesn't matter just because Melissa annoys you. She fined me for riding copper on my own land. And if we want to beat that claim, we need facts stronger than outrage. Rain drummed against the roof. What facts? First, the boundary. I glanced toward the western pasture. My survey shows the trail inside it. Your closing survey gives us a starting point. I want the corridor independently located against the original monuments. Then we find out what document gave Briarwood access in the first place. I looked at her. You think there is one. I think 19 years of organized community use usually has a beginning. The next morning, Raymond Keller arrived at 7:15. 61. Gray mustache. Canvas jacket. Mud-stained boots. He unloaded a GPS receiver, metal detector, probe, and an old survey plat from his truck. We started near Barrett Creek. The ground was soft from overnight rain. Copper watched us from behind the pasture fence. Raymond followed an old cedar line downhill, sweeping the detector slowly. Nothing. 10 yards. 20. Then he stopped beside a leaning gatepost almost swallowed by blackberry vines. The detector chirped. Raymond pushed his probe into the mud. Once. Twice. The third time, clink. He looked at me. That's steel. We cleared the soil with our hands. A rusted survey monument appeared beneath the roots. Raymond checked the old plat. Then his receiver. He didn't smile. He just pointed west. Your line starts here. For the next 4 hours, one buried marker led us toward another. And every measurement pulled the so-called Briarwood Greenway deeper inside Barrett Creek Ranch. By noon, I wasn't wondering whether Melissa's map was convincing anymore. I was wondering why nobody had ever compared it to the ground. By the time Raymond found the 7th marker, Melissa's green line had disappeared completely. Not from her map. From reality. We stood knee-deep in wet grass near Barrett Creek, while Raymond stretched the survey across the hood of his truck. Mud covered his boots. My jeans were soaked below the knees, and Copper watched us from the fence with the bored expression of an animal wondering why humans needed expensive equipment to understand where a fence belonged. Raymond tapped the paper. Here. The original monument near the cedar gatepost. His finger moved south. Here. Another marker beside the creek. Then west. And here. The line connected cleanly. The Briarwood Greenway sat inside Barrett Creek Ranch. Not partly. Not by a few feet. The trail crossed my parcel for nearly 3/4 of a mile. So Melissa's map is wrong. Raymond shook his head. Different question. I waited. Her map shows where they use a trail. Mine shows where your boundary is. That sounded like something Lauren would say. Can you certify it? I already started. 2 days later, Lauren called me downtown. She had 3 folders waiting on her conference table. The first contained Raymond's preliminary survey. The second contained Briarwood maintenance records. The third was thin, old, brown around the edges. That one, she said, is why they've been crossing your ranch. I sat down. She opened the folder. The document had been recorded in 2006. Barrett Creek Recreational Access License. My eyes stopped on the last word. License. Lauren nodded. Not a deed. Not an easement. Not according to this document. I leaned closer. The agreement had been signed by Harold Barrett, the previous owner, and the developer that later transferred community operations to Briarwood. It allowed residents to use a defined trail across the ranch for walking, cycling, and access to the county preserve. So Melissa does have rights. Briarwood has permission. That sounds like rights. It is a legal interest we take seriously. But the kind of interest matters. Lauren turned to page 3. This is not ownership of the trail, and it does not give the HOA general regulatory authority over Barrett Creek Ranch. I read the paragraph. Then another. The license required community use to remain compatible with normal ranch operations. Agricultural access was protected. Livestock movement was protected. And then I saw it. Equestrian use. I read the sentence again. Wait. Lauren smiled slightly. Keep going. The agreement prohibited community rules or activities from materially interfering with the owner's agricultural or equestrian use of the licensed corridor. I leaned back. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the air conditioner. They find me for exactly what this says they can't interfere with. That appears to be the problem. And the sign. Worse. I thought about those bright new bolts in my cedar post. No horses. HOA regulated trail. Can I close the gate? Lauren's expression changed immediately. Not yet. I exhaled. You really enjoy saying that. I enjoy keeping clients from turning strong cases into complicated ones. She tapped the license. There are notice provisions. Cure periods. Conditions governing suspension or termination. We follow every word. So I just let them keep doing this. For the moment. I looked down at the document. What happens if Melissa keeps interfering? Lauren turned to the final page. A paragraph had been underlined and penciled decades earlier. Access could be suspended under specified conditions if the licensee materially interfered with protected ranch operations and failed to cure after proper notice. I read it twice. The trail suddenly looked different in my head. For 19 years, Briarwood had treated it like part of the neighborhood. Maps, signs, gravel, rules. But underneath all of that was permission. Permission with conditions. My phone buzzed. An email. Melissa Crawford. Second notice of equestrian violation. Additional fine, $750. Lauren watched my face. What? I turned the phone toward her. She read it. Then looked at the license. Then back at the email. Don't answer yet. I almost laughed. Outside her window, traffic moved through the intersection below. Back at the ranch, Copper was probably standing beside the gate waiting for his evening ride. Melissa had just fined me a second time for doing the one thing the document specifically protected. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. So what do I do tomorrow morning? Lauren closed the folder. Ride your horse. For the first time since that first certified envelope arrived, I smiled. Now that sounds like legal advice I can follow. The next morning, I saddled Copper at 6:15. Not because I wanted to provoke Melissa. Because I wanted to do exactly what I had been doing before she decided my horse needed HOA approval. The barn smelled like hay, leather, and the sweet grain Copper had scattered around his feeder. Outside, dawn stretched pale orange across the eastern pasture. I tightened the cinch. Copper exhaled. Apparently we're gathering evidence. He looked unimpressed. We reached the western trail 20 minutes later. The No Horses sign was still bolted to my cedar post. I left it there. That was harder than it sounds. Copper walked beneath it. Thump, thump, thump. Halfway toward Barrett Creek, I heard an engine behind us. White SUV. Briarwood Community Compliance. Same vehicle. Same employee. This time I was ready. I pulled out my phone before he did. His camera rose. Click. Mine did too. Click. Morning. He lowered his phone. Mr. Barrett, you've already been notified about equestrian restrictions. I have. You're continuing anyway? I looked down at Copper. Seems that way. You may receive another violation. Make sure the timestamp is accurate. His expression changed. Just slightly. I wrote on. By 11:06, the email arrived. Third notice of equestrian violation. $500 additional penalty. Total outstanding balance, $2,000. I forwarded it to Lauren. Her response came less than a minute later. Save original. Do not reply. So I didn't. That became my routine. Right. Click. Email. Save. Letter. Scan. File. Melissa apparently mistook silence for surrender. On Monday, another HOA sign appeared near the north entrance. On Tuesday, a compliance vehicle drove slowly past my barn. Wednesday brought a certified demand stating that continued violations could result in suspension of recreational privileges. That phrase stopped me. I stood at my kitchen counter reading it again. Recreational privileges. I called Lauren. You're going to like this one. Send it. I photographed the letter. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. Lauren didn't say hello. She actually wrote that? Apparently, I have privileges on my own ranch. Bring everything tomorrow. Her conference table disappeared beneath paper. Violation 1. Violation 2. Violation 3. Photographs. Emails. The NO horses sign. Maintenance records. Raymond's certified survey. Then Lauren placed the 2006 license in the center. She aligned Melissa's latest letter beside page 3. 2 sentences. 2 completely different versions of authority. Melissa's, owner's equestrian activity must cease within the regulated corridor. The license. Community use shall not materially interfere with owner's agricultural or equestrian operations. I stared at them. That's almost impressive. Lauren nodded. She's documenting the conflict for us. Can we close the gate now? Soon. I groaned. She turned to the notice section. The agreement requires written notice and an opportunity to cure before suspension under this provision. We follow that process exactly. What does cure mean here? They stop claiming authority they don't have. Withdraw the restrictions. Remove unauthorized signage. Stop interfering with protected ranch use. And if they don't, Lauren tapped the suspension clause. Then we discuss exercising the rights this agreement gives you. That afternoon, she sent Briarwood formal notice. Not angry. Not dramatic. 6 pages. The fines were disputed. The HOA's regulatory claim over Barrett Creek Ranch was rejected. The signage had been installed without authorization. Equestrian use was expressly protected. Briarwood was directed to cure the interference within the period specified by the agreement. Melissa called me at 4:18. I watched her name flash across my phone. I let it ring. Again at 4:26. Again at 5:03. Then came an email. Mr. Barrett, your attorney's interpretation is absurd. Briarwood will continue enforcing its long-standing trail rules. I forwarded it to Lauren. This time her reply was only 4 words. That will be useful. I walked outside. Copper stood beside the western fence. Beyond him, the NO horses sign caught the last orange light of the evening. For weeks, that sign had irritated me every time I saw it. Now it looked different. It wasn't authority. It was evidence. Melissa thought she was building a record against me. Fine by fine. Letter by letter. Photograph by photograph. What she didn't realize was that we were building one too. And hers came with her signature. Friday at 4:52 p.m. Lauren called and said 5 words I had been waiting 3 weeks to hear. You can close the gate. I was standing inside the barn with Kappa's saddle over one arm. For a second, I didn't move. You're sure? The cure period expired this afternoon. Outside, rainwater dripped from the roof into a galvanized bucket. Ping, ping, ping. And Melissa? Briarwood responded through counsel this morning. They're refusing to withdraw the fines, refusing to remove the trail restrictions, and maintaining that their rules govern the corridor. I set the saddle down. So they had their chance. They had notice. They had the contractual cure period. They chose their position. I looked through the barn doors toward the western trail. Then what happens now? Under the license, you can suspend community access while the interference remains unresolved. Do it exactly the way we discussed. Existing ranch gate. Clear notice. No traps. No improvised barriers. Nothing that creates a hazard. Just close my gate. Just close your gate. That sounded almost disappointingly simple. Maybe that was the point. I walked down to the western entrance as the clouds began breaking apart. The old steel gate had been there longer than Briarwood. 2 horizontal rails. Heavy hinge posts. A chain polished silver in places from decades of use. For years, the gate had stayed open against the fence because Harold Barrett's agreement allowed residents through. I swung it across the trail. The hinges complained. Creak. Then steel met steel. Clang. I threaded the chain through the post. Pulled it tight. Padlock. Click. No bulldozer. No trench. No pile of rocks. Just a ranch gate doing what ranch gates were built to do. I attached the notice Lauren had prepared. Private property. Community access temporarily suspended pursuant to recorded access agreement. Please use public routes. Below it was Lauren's office number. I photographed everything. Gate. Chain. Lock. Sign. Timestamp. Then I stepped back. The No Horses sign Melissa had installed was still 50 yards inside the ranch. I could see it from there. I left it exactly where it was. By 5:11, Melissa called. I watched her name appear. Didn't answer. 5:14 again. 5:19, then a text. Open the Greenway immediately. I forwarded it to Lauren. At 5:27, another message arrived. You do not have authority to deny Briarwood residents access to an established community amenity. I read that one twice, then looked at my gate, my fence, my pasture, my trail. There was something almost beautiful about the sentence. Melissa still believed authority came from saying the word authority often enough. At 6:03, a white SUV stopped outside the gate. She got out wearing the same pink blazer, white blouse, and black heels. Those heels lasted about 3 steps before sinking into the damp dirt. Cole. I was leaning against the pasture fence. Evening. What is this? A gate. Don't be childish. She grabbed the notice and read it. Her expression tightened. You cannot revoke 19 years of access because you're angry about a horse fine. I didn't. She looked up. Then open it. The agreement explains what happens when community use interferes with protected ranch operations. Our rules do not interfere with ranch operations. I pointed down the trail. The No Horses sign stood plainly in view. Melissa followed my finger. For once, she had nothing ready. You put that on my land, I said. Twice. Her jaw tightened. This is retaliation. No. Retaliation would have been closing the gate 3 weeks ago because I was mad. I tapped Lauren's notice. This is paperwork. Melissa stared at me, then at the padlock. You'll regret this when residents start showing up tomorrow. That was when I remembered Saturday, Briarwood's busiest trail morning. Cyclists, walkers, families, the riding club. Melissa turned toward her SUV. I called after her. Melissa. She stopped. Tell them tonight. She didn't turn around. They shouldn't drive all the way here expecting an open gate. Her shoulders stiffened. Then she got into the SUV and left. I watched the taillights disappear. Copper walked up behind me and pushed his nose against my shoulder. I rubbed the white blaze between his eyes. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. The gate sat locked beneath the fading light. And somewhere in Briarwood, Melissa Crawford was apparently deciding not to warn anybody. By 8:07 Saturday morning, Melissa's decision not to warn anybody had become my traffic problem. That was how the story caught up with itself. Nearly 40 Briarwood residents stood outside the western gate, while I sat on Copper inside Barrett Creek Ranch. Bicycles leaned against the fence. 2 golf carts idled on the shoulder. Kids peered through the steel rails. Behind them, a pair of horse trailers had nowhere to go. And in the middle of it all stood Melissa Crawford. Pink suit, white blouse, black heels sinking into ranch dirt. Open the gate, Mr. Barrett, before you turn this into something you can't undo. Copper shifted beneath me. I looked at the notice attached to the gate, then at her. Funny. Last month you fined me for using it. A cyclist near the front frowned. Fined you for what? Melissa turned toward him. This is a private legal dispute. I almost admired that sentence. For 3 weeks, she had called the trail a community amenity. Now that the community was listening, suddenly it was private. Lauren's SUV pulled in behind the crowd. She stepped out carrying the document case. Melissa saw her. You. Good morning, Melissa. There's nothing good about this. Lauren stopped beside the gate. I disagree. Everyone's here. That drew a few nervous smiles. Melissa pointed toward the lock. Your client is holding residents hostage over HOA enforcement. I leaned forward in the saddle. Melissa, nobody's being held anywhere. There's a public road 4 miles east. That is not reasonable access. It's public access. She turned to the residents. Briarwood has used this greenway continuously for 19 years. We maintain it. We have established rights. Lauren opened the case. You had permission. Silence. Melissa stared at her. We have more than permission. Then this should be easy. Lauren removed the 2006 agreement. Show us the easement. Melissa reached into her black binder, and pulled out the familiar green map. This corridor is documented on every Briarwood recreational plan. Lauren barely glanced at it. That's a map. It demonstrates established community use. It does. Melissa hesitated. Lauren held up the recorded agreement. This demonstrates why that use was allowed. A man standing beside a mountain bike stepped closer. What is it? Recreational access license. Melissa's face tightened. Lauren continued. It permits community passage across Barrett Creek Ranch subject to specific conditions. It does not transfer ownership of the corridor or grant Briarwood general regulatory authority over the ranch. Someone behind Melissa said, "Wait. The HOA doesn't own the trail." Melissa snapped around. That is an oversimplification. I looked at Lauren. She almost smiled. Melissa turned back toward me. You're punishing these people because you don't like our horse rules. That was when I pointed down the trail. 50 yards inside the gate, sunlight caught the green letters on the sign she had installed. No horses. HOA regulated trail. Several residents saw it. Lauren removed another page. The license specifically protects the landowner's agricultural and equestrian use. She placed Melissa's violation notice against the gate. Then the second. Then the third. $750. $750. $500. $2,000 total. A woman beside one of the horse trailers stared at Melissa. You fined him for riding here. Melissa crossed her arms. He repeatedly violated established trail regulations. Lauren tapped the license. Regulations. The agreement does not authorize you to impose on protected ranch operations. Melissa's voice sharpened. You cannot simply terminate community access. We didn't simply do anything. Lauren produced the formal notice. Written notice was provided. The contractual cure period expired yesterday. Briarwood declined to withdraw the restrictions or stop the interference. Mr. Barrett exercised the suspension provision according to the agreement. Melissa looked around. The crowd wasn't angry at me anymore. That frightened her more than the gate. She stepped toward Copper. At least get off that horse while we discuss this. I stared at her. Then at the NO horse's sign. A laugh escaped somewhere behind her. Then another. Melissa realized what she had said. Too late. I rubbed Coppa's neck. Still enforcing the horse rule. Her face flushed. Nobody needed to shout. Nobody needed deputies. Nobody needed a dramatic threat. The recorded document was hanging from Lauren's hand, and the locked gate was standing exactly where it had stood for decades. Melissa had spent 3 weeks insisting rules mattered. That Saturday morning, she finally met one written before hers. 6 weeks later, I opened the gate again. Not because Melissa Crawford won. Because the people standing on the other side had never been the problem. It was another Saturday morning, almost the same hour as the day I closed it. Sunlight filtered through the cottonwoods along Barrett Creek. Dew silvered the pasture grass, and Coppa's hooves made that familiar soft rhythm beneath me. Thump, thump, thump. But something had changed. The NO horse's sign was gone. So were the fines. All $2,000 of them. Briarwood's board had spent the first week after the closure doing something Melissa should have done before she mailed me that first violation. They read the agreement. Then they hired independent counsel to read it again. The conclusion wasn't dramatic. It was worse for Melissa. Briarwood had a recreational access license. Not ownership. Not general regulatory authority over Barrett Creek Ranch. Permission. Permission that came with conditions. The board rescinded every equestrian violation and formally acknowledged that normal agricultural and equestrian operations on my ranch were outside HOA control. The unauthorized signs came down 3 days later. Melissa resigned as president before the board meeting scheduled to review her handling of the dispute. I didn't attend. I didn't need applause. I needed boundaries. Lauren spent the next month negotiating with Briarwood's new board president, Daniel Mercer. Daniel came to the ranch wearing jeans and work boots. No binder. No compliance SUV. He stood beside the same cedar post where Melissa had installed her sign. We'd like the trail reopened permanently. I'd like that too. He looked surprised. Melissa told everyone you wanted Briarwood off the ranch. I wanted Briarwood to stop pretending the ranch belonged to Briarwood. That distinction became the foundation of the new agreement. The recorded document identified the trail precisely. Community access remained. Maintenance responsibilities were defined. Residents could walk and cycle through the corridor. Scheduled community equestrian use could continue. But the HOA could not regulate my livestock, ranch vehicles, fences, agricultural work, or personal horseback riding. And nobody installed another sign without written permission. Daniel read that clause twice. Fair. On reopening morning, he stood outside the gate with about 20 residents. No speeches, no television cameras, just neighbors waiting to use a trail they had loved for years. I reached down from copper and unlocked the padlock. Click. The chain slipped through the steel post. I swung the gate open. Creak. The same sound it had made when I closed it. Only this time, nobody was angry. A cyclist rolled forward, then stopped beside Copper. He was the same man who had asked about the fine during the confrontation. He looked up at me. Nice horse. I rubbed Copper's neck. He should be. HOA valued one ride at $750. The man laughed. Even Daniel did. Copper flicked an ear like he was taking credit. Near the entrance stood a new sign. Barrett Creek Ranch. Private property. Community access by recorded agreement. I had installed it myself. 2 cedar posts. Concrete footings. Level across the top. Nothing complicated. Just accurate. Later that afternoon, after the cyclists and walkers had disappeared toward the county preserve, I rode Copper down to the creek. We passed the old gatepost where Raymond had found the first survey monument. I stopped, dismounted, brushed dry leaves away with my boot. The rusted steel marker was still there. Small, ugly, easy to overlook. 19 years of trail maps hadn't moved it. 19 years of gravel hadn't moved it. 19 years of people calling that trail the Briarwood Greenway hadn't moved it. That was the part Melissa never understood. Using something isn't the same as owning it. Maintaining something isn't automatically the same as controlling it. And permission doesn't become authority just because everybody forgets who gave it. I climbed back into the saddle. Copper started toward home. His hooves pressed fresh prints into the trail. Thump, thump, thump. The whole fight had started because Briarwood fined me for those hoof prints. In the end, the horse was never the problem. Melissa's mistake was believing her rules traveled farther than her authority. Mine was assuming she knew where that authority ended. Now we both knew. A rule only has power where your boundary begins. And justice doesn't have to slam a gate forever. Sometimes it just closes one long enough to remind everyone whose hand is on the key.